This is Three Dog.
How can I help?
This is Sophistry,
a show where we dive into the world of video games and tech, telling you how to spend your money.
Isn't that nice of us?
Here are your gaming hosts, Andy Borkowski and Shaggy Dave.
The show's about to begin.
VGS.
Shall we play a game?
Begins now.
Andy Borkowski here, Talk Radio AM 640. Video Game Sophistry, your weekly dose of video game love and affection. And I wish to share my video game love and affection with someone very close to me. I know Valentine's is over. It went, but David?
Hi.
I love you, brother.
Thanks. How was your Valentine's Day?
It was great. I noticed you didn't say I love you back.
No.
Okay. It was great. You know, we were here, we had our big show, and we had some great laughs talking about all the Mass Effect characters that we loved. I remember you had a big, long letter to, what was her name?
Kelly Chambers?
Kelly Chambers from the Mass Effect franchise. So that was great. We got to talk to Patrick Weeks, but it's a brand new week. Let's not look past. Let's look forward.
Sure. We got to put your behind in your past.
What?
It's a Lion King reference.
All right, so Video Game Sophistry. Again, if you want to see our extended footage, please head to our website, 640toronto.com/VGS, Video Game Sophistry on Facebook. And a real big treat this week, if you head to YouTube, Mr. Spargala, you haven't seen them yet, have you? But there's some videos of me, this guy, this voluptuous man, all dressed up in a mocap suit with a big, monstrous machine on my face as I acted out scenes from the upcoming Ubisoft game, Far Cry Primal. And let me tell you, I should not be an actor.
Shouldn't he be a radio host?
Okay, all right. Again, excellent. Always love it when you come out swinging.
I'm always glad to be here.
We, of course, have our interns here. We have Matt, a voice that you've heard many times, and a new intern, Nason. He is joining the program, helping us out, and we're going to try and filter in their opinions throughout the hour. But before we get to that, we have to, of course, tell you what's coming up this week in gaming.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. What's new, pussycat? Whoa, 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 whoa.
All right, now we have the list of video games that are coming out in the next Sunday to Sunday week period. David Spargala, what are we starting with?
One of my favorites.
Really?
Last year.
Really?
No, but it's a new game.
Okay.
Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. What?
Sorry. Well, that's great. No, I'm looking forward to it too. That's a Tuesday release, right?
Yeah, it comes out the 23rd.
What's that one about? I forget.
Well, the zombies have conquered. They've taken over. And the plants are on the attack for the first time. Can you believe that?
I can't. I'm
you
very
defeat
surprised.
A wave, and a more powerful wave will come, and then another more powerful wave.
All right, Dave. The next big game, of course, now that's a big one. It's a big EA title. They love that. Far Cry Primal. It is our big feature this week. That is who we're talking with. You know, we're going to have maybe a half hour to 40 minutes of this show dedicated solely to Far Cry Primal, so I'm not going to get into it just yet. Another big game, though, coming out this Tuesday.
Yeah, the Walking Dead Michonne episodes. It comes out Tuesday. It's just the first episode. It's only going to be 3 episodes, actually. It's a mini-series. Mm-hmm. This one's called Into Deep, I believe. And the other one comes out in March and April.
Only 3 episodes, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. This is the Telltale Games, right?
Yeah.
All right, the next big one is Tiny Troopers. Never heard about this game whatsoever. Let's read the description. You fire yourself into an epic bite-sized arcade shooter filled to the brim with action-packed mini-maps of mayhem, literally giving you no information whatsoever. So we got to look for that one. What's the next one, Dave?
It's called The Flame in the Flood. Again, I've never heard of it. But it is a journey through the backwaters of a forgotten post-societal America. Sounds like a lot like Fallout.
No, actually, it looks all right. You know what? I'm going to check that out. But I think the game that we're all going to check out, of course, Agatha Christie's The ABC Murders, coming out on Tuesday, along with the big-budget game Far Cry Primal. It's Agatha Christie, ABC Murders. I don't need to tell you anything else than that. But before we get into more video game news and information, we got to take a break. This is Andy Borkowski here, VGS Talk Radio, AM 640.
This is VGS with Andy and Dave on Talk Radio, AM 640.
Andy back here for VGS Talk Radio, AM 640. Thank you all for joining us on your beautiful Sunday evening. We're talking video games. We already discussed the games that are coming out. Of course, I'm joined by Shaggy Dave, as always. How you doing, sir?
I'm great.
Are you excited?
Yes.
Coming up is one of your favorite segments.
Yes.
You can say more than yes. It's me and you, brother.
Yes, it is my favorite segment.
You always complain about it, but I love how it turns out.
It turns out great.
We're, of course, joined this week by intern Matt. How you doing today?
Fantastic, Andy. Yourself?
Excellent. Really glad to have you here on the program.
Really
We're gonna
glad to be here.
Oh, all right. Hold it up. Ease it up there. Reel it in.
I don't want to steal your spotlight, Andy. I'm sorry,
there we
man.
go. How dare you?
My energy.
Yeah.
Sorry, man.
See, we need to be at the right energy. Yeah. So to kind of boost us up and get our energy going, we have, of course, News of the Week with Shaggy Dave.
This week in gaming.
I've got to do the news!
Fallout 4 DLC is on its way. Bethesda announced that it will be releasing its first series of add-ons. They include Automatron, where you hunt down a bunch of evil robots, harvest their parts, and make your own awesome robots. In Wasteland Workshop, you get to capture live creatures by designing and setting up cages. What you choose to do with those creatures is entirely up to you. You could have them tamed, or you could battle them. Far Harbor is off the coast of Maine, where you try to bring peace back to this dreadful place. It's also the largest landmass for an add-on Bethesda has ever created. You can buy these individually or get the Season's Pass, but that Season's Pass is going to cost you an extra $20 as they have increased it from $30 to $50.
There's more to fighting than brute strength.
Street Fighter V is here, but what's Street Fighter without Chun-Li's enormous breasts? I really don't have an answer to that, and apparently Capcom doesn't either. In a demo last year, they said they would fix the hilarious bouncy jiggle glitch on Chun-Li, but now that the game is out, it looks like they didn't get around to it, or they just forgot about it. Oddly enough, it only happens on the second player side, but still, a minor glitch like that ain't gonna stop us from getting our Street Fighter on, is it? Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic is being remade using Unreal Engine 4. The game is being developed by Poem Studios and a bunch of Old Republic fans. They're adding new missions, worlds, and the ability to switch from first and third person views by just pressing F on your keyboard. If you're curious on how it's being made, they're live streaming it over Twitch. Oh, and the best part is, it's going to be made free for all of us to enjoy. Telltale has released the first few minutes of the new Walking Dead Michonne game, and it totally reeks of awesomeness. For you comic fans, it takes place in between issues 126 and 139, where Michonne was MIA. The first episode is set to be released this Tuesday, February 23rd, with the final 2 episodes being released in March and April.
I left so many people that I loved behind, but there are 2. Just 2 that I can never forget.
Thank you very much, David Spargala, Shaggy Dave. Oh, I gave away your secret identity.
You say that every week.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
That was a pretty good news of the week.
I'm
though.
like Iron Man. They know who I am.
Yeah?
I am the Iron Man.
Did you then fight? Oh, no, I don't want to ruin it.
Fight who?
Well, there's many characters I could have mentioned that Iron Man fights.
I fought Mickey Rourke.
Did you?
No, I never saw that one.
It's not very good.
Nah,
That's the
what I
worst
heard.
of the Iron Mans. This is a video game show. Come on, boys.
There's an Avengers Lego game.
There is. It's pretty fun. It's
Good.
not as good as the other one, but it's pretty
Moving
fun.
on.
We're not talking about that now.
No, that's next week.
Of course, we have your daily dose of everything that is video game. Like I said before, if you want to have the extended, uncut version of this, where Dave and I say obscene things to each other, please hit our website, 640toronto.com/VGS. Coming up after this, we're going to be talking about Far Cry Primal. I had the chance to go down to Ubisoft here in the city. Had an amazing time. Don't want to say too much more than that. Got some great interviews. The game's coming out soon. Stay in touch for that. But what we're talking about now is shooters. David Spargala, games that you enjoy a lot. The big news this week actually is from id Software. They went to Twitter and said their upcoming kind of matriarch of all multiplayer gaming, Doom, is going to have a 13-hour single-player campaign. Thoughts? You're looking at me with that empty, beautiful face.
Beautiful. I think that's great. I look forward.
Did you ever
to,
play Doom? Are you a fan of Doom?
I got, what was it, the collection for 360 or something like that?
Yeah.
And it got too glitchy for me, and so I stopped.
It's a game that's very, very rough and tumble and almost known for being the apex of everything multiplayer. You know, it's a game that really it shined on those merits, and the idea that they have a 13-hour plus, major campaign is kind of surprising. And it got me to thinking, you look at first-person shooters now in the gaming world, and a lot of these first-person shooters don't even care about a single-player campaign.
One word, or actually two. They suck.
Okay, what sucks exactly?
Just there's no story. It's so over the top. It's very dramatic.
Are you talking about the games or the actual campaigns?
The campaigns.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
So you just think they don't do them well at all?
Yes, not at all. It's so dramatic. It's just here's a flying cart, duck, boom. Oh yeah, you get split in half. Yeah, okay.
So it's not something that you were looking for.
It's not something. I look forward to playing campaigns all the time, but it's just they're so boring, and they pay all these big bucks for voice actors, and then it's
Kevin Spacey
or Troy Baker. Remember Troy Baker's in Advanced Warfare 2?
Yeah.
So it's not worth it anymore. I told you. I've said this time and again on this show. The last good campaign was Modern Warfare 2. That's it. Maybe Black Ops.
All right. So you clearly, your stick's in the mud on this one.
But if they're putting all this time in Doom.
Because it's a pretty long campaign. If it was a 6-hour campaign, no one would be talking about it.
No.
But because it's 13 plus, does that, I'm trying to look at it glass half full, perhaps that means that it's not just a top-loaded, completely unfun campaign, but they put some real attention to it and gave some real resources. Of course, intern Matt, you are literally draped in the garb.
Draped in the garb. I like the sound of that.
Of multiplayer fun. You play a lot of online shooters.
Well, like for starters, I play Counter-Strike, which has 0 campaign. But I mean, like, I love campaigns. I love campaigns myself, but you don't necessarily need a campaign or a single-player story to make a beautiful game. Like Counter-Strike, David Defeats Source, DayZ even. It puts you in a setting of, like, you versus whatever, and it just brings that competitive feel of, like, just pure fun. And that's all you really need in a game, isn't it? You don't need a story. You just need
I
fun.
don't think I could ever disagree with you more. I play games. Like, I understand games should work as games, systems in place that work together to provide an outlet. But what I really, really like in the RPGs that I bleed for like 300 hours and don't sleep are the interesting characters and a fun way to experience a narrative. For first-person shooters, where for me, I'm not really loving the mechanics, I'm getting pulverized online. If I don't have a campaign, why would I give my $60?
That's true. But for somebody who, like look at the pinball machine on an arcade. That doesn't have a campaign or a story.
I don't think you should compare that.
But listen,
look at skipping rope.
The skill is still there. The skill is still there, and that's what builds competitive communities and competitive games, and that's what people love it. It's like a sport. They love that thrill of just completely wrecking someone else of lesser skill compared to them.
It's odd because very rarely on this show are we all on 3 different sides of the map. You have me, Andy Burkowski, host of the show, voice, mind, everything behind it, who is really on the side of we need to have full-fledged stories in our single-player experiences to make the multiplayer even matter. I don't care about, because it is just pixels on a screen. It doesn't mean anything unless there's motivation. Then to my right, we have intern Matt, who sees it as, a closed system that you can get better at through perfection of gameplay. And then we have Shaggy Dave, who's watching sports on the TV.
What?
No, who finds himself kind of more in the middle. You can see yourself on both sides of the map.
Yeah, I can.
You go both ways.
By the way, I also play sports games.
Okay. All right. Reel it in. There are many games out there that are shooters.
Yeah, that don't have campaigns.
What do you got?
One just came out.
Really?
Recently. Star Wars Battlefront.
Of course.
Another one, Titanfall. Remember that game?
Love it. No, you hate it.
Yeah, it came out and it was just strictly multiplayer. They tried to put it a little, what was it, training or something at the beginning?
Yeah, they had some.
I didn't understand what was going. It's like you got so much chaos in that game. I didn't understand any of it.
Anything else? Any other big ones that you see on that list
Just
there?
looking at the list here. Let's see what we got.
The things that kind of stand out, because so many people play shooters and maybe only shooters. You know, people that identify themselves as gamers nowadays. There we go. Matt's raising his hand for those watching on YouTube. If you do want to see our faces, by the way, I'm stalling for time as Dave is looking at the list.
I'm waiting for you to finish.
Oh, okay. Head to YouTube, type in Video Game Sophistry. You're going to see me, Dave, Matt, all of our interns here. But that list of games, what do you got?
Battlefield. Yeah, and Destiny, which I couldn't stand.
See, that's really interesting because we're talking with our new intern, Nason, about this beforehand. The Destiny is a great example of a game that kind of throws both paradigms out the window. It offers multiplayer experiences. It offers a single-player experience, but the single-player is meshed entirely with multiplayer. It's more of an MMO of the World of Warcraft days. And you didn't like that, but for me, who wants my RPG in it, it gave me everything I wanted.
Oh.
Yeah.
Look at that. Well, at least it's satisfying.
But what do we think about what do we think about Doom? What's our final thoughts on this? What do we really want to see from this game?
I think that what they're doing is perfect. I'm really excited for a 13-hour campaign.
There we go. Positivity. Other side?
I'm pretty excited for it as well.
That's not the other side.
Well,
That's
okay.
the good side.
It is the good side, but we have a bit of a consensus. All right, I'll go with the populace. I'll be the Donald Trump. I'll agree with you guys. All right. Wolfenstein is a great game too. That's not what I meant to say. Doom coming out id Software very, very soon. But up next, we are talking about an experience that I had at Ubisoft. I got to be in Far Cry Primal. What? Huge game.
I don't believe it.
It's me.
I can't believe it's not butter.
I'm the fat guy. Get ready for it. Andy
the bear?
Burkowski, VGS Talk Radio, AM 640.
This is VGS with Andy and Dave on Talk Radio, AM 640.
Andy back here, VGS Talk Radio, AM 640. One-stop spot for all of your gaming news, reviews, interviews. I'm joined, of course, by Shaggy Dave on my left. How you doing, sir?
Good.
On my right?
Matt the intern, great
Matt
as
the
always.
intern. All right. Whoa, very excited. Are you guys ready to hear about my life?
I guess. I don't know.
It's going to happen anyway. I had an amazing experience this week. I got the chance to eat a Big Mac. No, I went down to the West End to an old drafty warehouse, opened the door, Ubisoft emblazoned on the wall. Ooh. Ubisoft has a huge warehouse all to themselves here in Toronto. It's pretty cool.
That's cool.
You don't expect it to be like that, but I went inside and I was actually invited there to check out this brand new title.
This is the age of death, but you will not slip into the darkness. You will pull stone from the earth and fire from the sky. You will command the beasts and fight for us all.
That garble of noise is Far Cry Primal. If you're very familiar with the Far Cry games, it's usually very esoteric, it's very crazy, and you're jumped into this big open world that has something dubious about it, but the sense of irony and insanity are always found in the Far Cry games. They're fun, easy to play, and it was surprising that Ubisoft decided to take the turn to instead do a game set in the Paleolithic era. Ooh. So that's 10,000 years ago. On its face, a lot of people say, oh, it's going to be, a basic caveman type of thing. A lot of people, grunting and moving around. Ubisoft took it to a place I couldn't believe. I got to check out their studios, beautiful place, and I saw their mocap studio. That's where they do all the actual acting for it. If you go online right now to Video Game Sophistry on YouTube, you'll see some videos of me with a huge robot machine on my head, fake spears in my hands, and, little dots on my body because I got to actually be in the game for some kind of mock scenes.
Interesting.
Can you believe it?
I can't.
The most surprising thing was I actually got to act with some of the actors who were there. One actress, Kara Ricketts, she portrays Salia in Far Cry Primal, and she was excellent. She was so welcoming, a lot of fun. But she is very rhythmic with her movements, She looks like she's from that time period.
No.
No, not like her in the
Okay,
game.
yeah, okay, got
Yeah,
it,
no,
okay,
I'm
got it,
sorry.
got it,
Clearly,
got
she's a
it.
beautiful woman. I did not mean that at all. She's an incredibly attractive woman. I do not mean that she looks like a prehistoric man. No. In the game, it was really cool because even though we're acting in these mocap suits, screens all over the walls showed what we would look like in the game. So it got real-time feedback. So it was really, really cool. And it's often those things that you see where characters will do something kind of funny or sexual in a game that you normally wouldn't associate.
Yeah.
But the whole point of this anecdote was she was very rhythmic and methodic with her movements. She looked like she belonged in the game.
Okay.
When I acted out these scenes, I did not look like I belonged in the game.
So you're telling me you didn't get in touch with your primal ancestors?
I did not get in touch with my primal ancestors at all. In fact, I looked like a lumbering fool walking in just saying, oh no, this is it. And it's cool because we learned a lot from Ubisoft that movement and conveying narrative through a touch, a glance in a video game is where they're going with this game. The cinematic director, he's our main interview this week. His name's David Footman. He really goes in depth about why this game stands above the rest, why they were able to create an experience that, you know, a lot of other games don't do, and not something you'd associate with Far Cry. So I want to take you through a little bit of that experience. I got a chance to, like I said, play a scene, and in that scene, it was split into two versions. First was the emotional scene. In this circumstance, we were literally just told by the director what to do, what to feel, and we got to input the lines ourselves. Here's a little clip of what that was like for this not trained actor with huge robot machines on him acting in the video game Far Cry Primal.
Now she goes over here. She goes over here because she has this. She has a neurosis. When she gets stressed out, she cuts ears off people.
Yeah.
So she's cutting an ear off. Now go down and reassure her.
No, don't do that. We might need them.
No, it's like having a drink or a cigarette. They make me feel better.
Whatever you need.
Now you stand up. You stand up, right? And she's gonna tell you what she needs.
Okay.
You have to kill Ul and bring me his ears.
All right, guys. So what do you think? What do you think? Silence.
I was scared. A little terrifying. Is this a horror game or is this an adventure game?
You heard the difference, though, right? In the tone of the actors.
Yeah.
Of the Andy Burkowski versus the, trained actor in this way. David, I'm very surprised. I've been speaking ad nauseum, and you have not interrupted me with an insult.
It's coming at the end, don't worry.
So that kind of conveys, what it was like to act in that particular scene. You were moving spot to spot, mark to mark, just talking about emotions. Now, after that, because you're dealing with a real language, this is what it sounded like when we tried it again.
Winja Baltasha.
Winja Baltasha.
Guayfamas.
Guayfamas.
Shaus Ul Dausam. Sanakwai Dashanchi. Parshai. Salwa Winja Marwa.
So again, it's amazing to see that on the one hand, on the one first take, there's real emotion behind it. And the only way you can get these actors to really convey this complex narrative with these words that mean nothing to them is to have that back and forth. And doing that, I think, makes this game a level above. I really, really do.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. Great word. Great word to describe that.
All right, continuing with this next, we have David Footman, the cinematics director on Far Cry Primal. He was the guy taking me through the paces. He's going to tell you a little bit more about what it was like to work on the game. Right after this, Andy Burkowski, VGS Talk Radio, AM 640.
You're listening to VGS with Andy Barkowski and David Spargala on Talk Radio, AM 640.
VGS back here. Andy, your host. Dave, co-host. Matt, intern. Nason, intern behind the velvet curtain. And you just heard us talk about Ubisoft's upcoming game, Far Cry Primal. This week, like I mentioned before, I had a lot of fun. I got to actually go to Ubisoft Studios and check out the game. One of my favorite interviews that I had this week was with David Footman. He's the cinematics director on the game. He's done a lot of movies, a lot of indie films, and he took us through what it was like to create a title, a video game that's based on characters' emotions from 10,000 years ago. They use the actual Paleolithic language in a lot of cases. It's a huge feat. It's something that you take for granted. and it's coming up right now. We're in this beautiful mocap studio. We had the chance to actually play out some scenes, and my leader, the person that took me through it, thank you so much for letting me be in your game. I'm going to be in the game, right?
Oh, yeah.
See?
Oh, yeah.
There we go.
You are Takar.
Who am I speaking with today?
My name's David Footman, and I'm the cinematics director on Far Cry Primal.
So we got a great chance to actually see what it's like to develop a lot of the scenes here for Far Cry Primal. For those that weren't fortunate enough to be invited to Ubisoft, what were some of the difficulties of developing now these cinematics for Far Cry Primal? Because you're taking on these huge challenges, different language, different entirely alien time period. What was it like?
Yeah, I think it was extremely intimidating when we first started the project, because a lot of people had tried to interpret what the Stone Age looks like. So there was no shortage of media out there depicting early man. And I think that when you dive into a fantasy like that, one of the pillars of our brand is authenticity, and the living, breathing world that the art team is going to create in the game is going to be second to none. So when it comes to cinematics, when you're bringing characters and story to life, there's kind of a ragged line between authenticity and great performances and going too far, or having it look sort of campy or cartoony or cliche-like. So you really there's a lot of work that we put into the research to try to define how these people move, because it could easily become a bunch of characters in like a Stone Age setting, walking around just like people nowadays.
1920s.
Yeah.
Idea what they had with
yeah,
that, right?
exactly. And I think that the more research we did on it, the more we realized that we needed to really attack the paradigm of what it means to be primal.
What are some of the ways you were able to do that through the actual mechanics of developing these cinematics? I got a chance to play around with it. I'd love to hear from your own words what you do to bring out both the emotion and I guess the clarity that players need.
Yeah, we started working with experts. So we started working with Terry Notary, who's a movement coach, and two movement coaches in Toronto, Roberto Campanella and Anissa Taipar. The goal was to run workshops for the actors where we really deconstructed the contemporary paradigm they had, and we created movement for each of the tribes. So there are three tribes: the Wenja, the Udam, and the Izila. So we had a signature for each tribe and a foundation that that they all shared. That was the same. Watching Terry work was kind of amazing because I guess he has a circus background, but his body control was mind-blowing. As a director, I'd never worked with movement before. I didn't really understand how it worked. We probably spent 6 days with the crew, the animators, and the actors working through this movement where he would deconstruct movement of the actors and then reconstruct a character by just talking about energy, force, and space. Like all of there's like the nomenclature for movement is really different than I've ever used in dialogue with actors. So we talk about intrinsic force, extrinsic force. We talk about types of energy. We talk about space that we move in. Like space can be heavy, it can be medium, it can be thin, it can be light space. And even talking about how people move, like do they start with their head? Do they have a periphery? Like what is their field of view? It was a whole new way to understand what an actor can do to create a character from like the inside out, right? Which is like they're not putting it on; it just comes in out. And
did you think when you were, tasked to create cinematics with a video game that you'd have to relearn the age-old basics of like theater in the round and become that kind of, I guess, artist of trying to develop these sort of things?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was such a different experience. Usually, I've mostly worked in contemporary. I've done some fantasy, but I've never done something that. And I guess the fear is when you're creating something is that there's no proof of what it was really like. So you always feel sort of vulnerable when you're presenting something that someone's going to say, "Oh, that's silly," or "that doesn't work," or "that's cliche." It's sort of it's not a really safe place because there's no reference for what it could be like. But what's crazy is the commitment that we got from Ubisoft to achieve this fantasy, because the fantasy of the Stone Age is the game. So without it, we fail. So there was a lot of attention, a lot of energy, a lot of emphasis on that fantasy, and they gave us the resources to achieve that, which I think it's kind of great because
it's amazing to think that like we're actually. I was speaking with the professor linguist that helped develop the language.
Yeah.
And I think one of the most touching things that he said was when he first heard Proto-European, completely done up, with the characters, he started to cry because he spends his whole life focusing on this, and this is authentic, this is exactly what he's learned, and this is exactly what he believes that these people did. So my one question to that, there's always a great commitment from Ubisoft to be authentic to the time period. Since this is so alien, how do you develop these characters in a way that still works for a video game?
Well, that's sort of the huge challenge because they need to work within the mechanics of gameplay. And
especially when you're dealing with movement and that it's very different than perhaps we would assume it would be. I'm just wondering when I'm grabbing the controller, how this attention to detail might translate a little bit.
Well, I mean, I think that when you're creating characters in a video game, what makes a character compelling is that they have a need. So every time we present a character in an open world video game, they need to have a strong need in the scene from the player. So that's the first thing. Whether we're doing Stone Age or contemporary, this is like a thread that we have to have. So I think that was something that we always had in our scenes. The other thing I think which helped us connect it was having the pillars of Touched by the World and our first-person camera reimagined allowed us to sort of hit the pillars that we needed to hit in terms of Stone Age and have that be part of the scenes that are introducing gameplay. Because we're characterizing, but we're also revealing inner character for our characters, and we're exploring their desires and needs and how the player can interact with that by, it always has to connect to a mission or some sort of an action item. So, I mean, what I like to say is bad people don't say bad things, they do bad things.
Okay, yeah.
And that's sort of something we live by with our characters. And that it's the same with the player, right? The player is defined by their actions.
That is, of course, our interview with David Footman. We'll be back with him, the cinematics director, on Far Cry Primal right after this break. Going to get a little more in-depth into what he expects actors to do when depicting characters that are 10,000 years old. This is Andy Burkowski on VGS Talk Radio, AM 640.
Now back to Video Game Sophistry with Andy and Dave on Talk Radio, AM 640.
Well, again, we're here at Ubisoft, Andy Burkowski, Talk Radio AM 640. We had the chance to see what they're doing at Far Cry Primal to create this world that's nearly 10,000 years ago. It's been an amazing day so far. I really would love to know what it's like for the actors, I guess, because you're with them, you're trying to introduce, you mentioned before, you have to kind of deconstruct and then rebuild. What is it like for their process to develop characters like this?
Well, I think
from directors.
I think my number one job is creating a really safe place. So in general, when you're working in a performance capture volume, it's quite a hostile place in terms of technology. You're surrounded by 80 cameras and lights and technology and wires, and it doesn't look anything like a set. You're not wearing wardrobe. So in terms of all that realization, like all the tools that actors get, my job as a director is to try to make it a very safe place and to try to help them not see this technology. It needs to become invisible, and they need to be focused on the emotion, on the performance. They need to be focused on how they're moving through space, how they're connected to their bodies, and about truth, right? It's about truthfulness. If an actor doesn't know their lines, they're never going to be able to say their lines in a way that comes inside out, where they're like transcending the scene in any which way. So it's really critical. When you work in performance capture, we do a lot of rehearsals. We do more rehearsals than they do in television or film. I know some films, they do like a lot of table reads and early rehearsals, but because of the technology, because of how kind of foreign it is in here, we tend to do rehearsals versus shooting 2-to-1. And even if it's a really simple scene, I run it like a football play, just by going through the body movement and the actions. What it does is it makes the actor relax and forget about they can be very vulnerable, right? I mean, they're putting themselves out into a really vulnerable place when you're acting, right? So it needs to be super safe because great acting comes when they take risks and risks of looking stupid or silly, right? It needs to be a place where they can do that. And there's so many things that they have to forget here, like the cameras, the lights. It's just like
the machine on their face as well.
There's a camera like 3 inches from their face.
Yeah.
They're like in a tight black suit. I mean, it's really about overcoming all of that and making it that safe space. And I find that we have a lot more success with people who have some theater background because it's not always centric to a camera, because we can move the camera wherever we want in the scene. We use reference cameras just to judge and validate the scenes, but we find that people with theater backgrounds have a more consciousness of their movement in space and more connected to their bodies. Saying that, I mean, when we choose an actor that doesn't have a lot of theater background, it just means we need to rehearse more and prepare more before we do the role.
When I think of the Far Cry games, I immediately think of irreverency, irony, the dedication to making me laugh in different sorts of ways I could never anticipate. A lot of that through the writing, a lot of that through the cinematics. Far Cry Primal, will I still have moments like that? And as a director, how difficult was it to kind of bring in that almost the Far Cry signature a little bit into that, into this kind of world, this kind of universe? It's so foreign. I can't imagine how you guys are going to do it.
Well, and what you're talking about, that's the DNA of the brand.
Yeah.
And when I describe the brand, it's like a mixed drink. It's like, it's fish out of water.
Okay.
It's like, what the heck just happened, right? And it's insanity, right? These are like the pillars of the brand. So we definitely have those elements, but we haven't announced them yet in the game.
Okay.
So I think that some of the characters, some of the NPCs, we call them specialists that you're going to bring into your tribe. Some of these characters completely fit the role.
And it's still, in your mind, from the research you have, is authentic. Because like you said, that's so important to Ubisoft when you create games like this, that it is authentic.
It is. And some of most of it is authentic. But when you know what the rules are, once in a while you can break them. So we definitely did break the rules to create some insanity and some really cool stuff. So I feel like all of that really crucial sort of DNA from Far Cry is still in the game, but it's a lot of stuff we haven't announced yet.
All right. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. Really do appreciate it. Again, here, Ubisoft in Toronto, right in our backyard, and look what they're making. Far Cry Primal, going to be out very, very soon. I guess just a final note very quickly. What do you hope players get from this game? You're the director. You've done the cinematic experiences. What do you hope they get from that they haven't been able to grab yet from maybe a video game in general?
Well, I think that for me, like what I find most profound about Far Cry Primal is that Stone Age fantasy. It's a place that we've read about, we've studied about in school about this time period. I think it's such a mind-blowing experience to be around that megafauna and to be hunting in reeds and in riverbeds and climbing up on cliffs. It's a game that I love to explore the open world in. And Far Cry has always had an amazing open world, but there's something magical about this open world. And I think that going in to cinematics, we knew that the open world and the realization would be second to none, because that's what Far Cry, that's part of the DNA. The open world always looks amazing. If you watch Far Cry trailers, you'll notice that half the shots in a Far Cry trailer are debug cameras in the open world.
Yeah.
They're not cinematic cameras because it looks that good. So when you make cinematics for a game like this, it needs to measure up. And you need to have all those elements in there. So I think that that's the experience I'm most excited about when I play the game is I believe we've measured up to that realism and to that authenticity that you see in the open world in our cinematics. We've layered them and we've integrated them into the world, I think, really well. And I think people are going to get really excited about being in that time because it was so well executed by the art team, the megafauna, the animals, the mammoths, the saber-tooth, the bears. Like it's a totally different paradigm, and it's just a cool place to be.
Cannot wait for it. Again, Andy Burkowski here for VGS on Talk Radio, AM 640.
This is VGS with Andy and Dave on Talk Radio, AM 640.
That is another show in the bag. We did it. We're still on the air.
Yep. For now.
For now. A big thank you, of course, to David Footman, the cinematics director at Far Cry Primal, all the folks at Ubisoft for being so gracious, letting me stop by and see how they make games. If you haven't checked it out yet, head to our YouTube page because you'll see me all strapped in with the mocap stuff. That's Video Game Sophistry on YouTube. There's other ways they can reach us, right, Dave?
Twitter at VGS_640. Facebook, Video Game Sophistry.
There you go. Website, I think, right?
640toronto.com/VGS.
That is for the uncut extended episode. A big thanks to everyone involved. First, to my right, Nason, the new intern. He did a lot of work for us today, so hats off to you. Matt, intern Matt.
Hey.
Thank you so much.
No problem. As always, it's always fun. It's always fun here at VGS, man.
There we go. Next week, talking Fallout. It's going to happen.
And Pokemon.
And Pokemon,
Anniversary.
Of course. It's the 20-year anniversary of Pokemon next week. Sorry, Dave. I almost forgot.
We got to go.
All right,
Brother,
we
have to go.
We got to get out of here. Andy Barkowski, VGS Talk Radio, AM 640.
Without a doubt, the worst episode ever. Rest assured that I was on